You are.
Setting up a live stream. I have to remember what the topic is now.
Boom, we're live.
All right.
How to get out of your own way and go from great to phenomenal with
Let me
Mr. David Lee.
On the Zoom now, I can see you. Am I in there?
Yeah, you're live, mate.
Okay. Can't see myself. Not that I need to. Shall I just take it away? Zachary?
Yep, you're good to go.
Good evening, gentlemen, and apologies for the delay in tonight's live broadcast. I'd like to say technical issues, but the only technical issues were me getting out of my own way. And that's what tonight's topic is all about, is how to get out of your own way and close the gap between great and phenomenal, or go from great to phenomenal. The reason I named or put the title out there as that tonight is that it really isn't as hard as we think as far as making any change. You know, there's a joke that goes, how many coaches does it take to change a light bulb? And the punchline is only one, but the light bulb has to really want to change. And I think why I find it one of the greatest problems I think people have in embracing change is that they just think it's all too hard. And the reality of it is, if you only knew how easy it was, by that I mean, as far as everybody knows what it is they need to change. You do. You know, you've been told, you've been shown. I had a conversation with a 10-year-old boy today, and he's not a relation of mine, but a friend, so to speak, as in I know his mother quite well. And I was telling him something, and he said, listen, you know, I don't want to hear it. You don't have to tell me what to do. And I said, quite simply, if I tell you once, I will never need to tell you again, because a mistake is a lesson. For us as men, even our most recent mistake is our most recent lesson rather. And so, sorry, I think I'm going to sneeze. The idea of looking at the mistakes that we made, and as I've always said, they're not mistakes, they're lessons. And then if you do them again, then they're a mistake. And if you do them again, thinking you're going to hurt or knowing you're going to hurt someone else and yourself, then in that case, it's either a crime or a sin. But the thing is, we know what we need to do. We know what we need to do to get out of our own way. We know who we need not to hang around in order to be brought down. We know the books that we should be reading in order to make ourselves smarter. We know the practices we should be practicing, or the behaviors and habits we should be adopting in order to make ourselves more successful. We know the foods we should be eating. We know the foods we shouldn't be eating. We know the people we should be making an effort to spend more time with. And we also know the people that when we do encourage them and lift them up a little bit, they become a little bit better. And so do we along the way. We also know where we're wasting time and where we shouldn't be wasting time. And we pretty much know that if we put it all together on a daily basis, turn up and do it every single day, then we will get what we want in life. But I guess what the difference between going from great to phenomenal is, it's one thing to know what it is that you want, but it's another thing to know why it is that you want it and what it is that you want. So you want something, why do you want it, and what will it give you again? And identifying that and knowing what it is you need to do and where you fall short is a daily practice. And I've said it before, Ella Willa Wilcox said, with every rising of the sun, consider your life has just begun. And one of the things for me is that I often think to myself, well, the things that I involve myself with and what I choose, or where I choose to spend my time, are based on what I will contribute and what I will get out of it. Quite often from a contribution perspective, the idea is, well, what I get out of it is what I put in. Even, for example, Zach asking me, could I step up? We all know Al's taken some time off for all the right reasons, family first, as I always say. And when the question came through, I thought about it in the first instance. Now, I'm very, very lucky. I have a very supportive group as far as family, friends, etc. are concerned. And they're very understanding, and they're very much involved. By involved, I mean they know what I do. They know what it is that I do, and they know that what I do it for a reason, and I do it to help people. So I'm losing power here. And I look at it from a numbers game. And, you know, quite often in ethics, if you've ever done ethics training or had any conversations around that, they might ask, okay, they'll give you a little riddle and riddle as far as what do we do and the result, how are we going to save all these people's lives? And it generally comes down to the most number of lives that are going to be saved for the least amount of cost. And the more women and children, hence the Titanic, then the more beneficial that course of action should be. And so when Zach had said to me in a text, hey, listen, any chance you can step up, understand if you can't, my first thought was, oh, I was going to watch footy with my brother. I was going to do this, And then I just thought, you know what? To serve a greater good, there'd probably be 400 blokes at least out there who would be getting this message and the further on as far as that. And so the decision was quite easy. It was, yes, I can step up. Now, for me, not only that, I stayed up late to watch the FA Cup final and all that sort of business, and I won't tell you the score if you haven't watched it, but I'm a little bit exhausted. The energy I get from talking to you fellas or talking around these topics and knowing that they benefit people, whether it's for a minute, a day, or a lifetime, that is absolute gold to me. And that is my greatest value exchange. And I keep talking about the greatest commodity that I have is time. It's the greatest commodity any of us have. And so for me, the idea that I was able to step up tonight is great. And again, it couldn't be to a better audience of people as far as yourselves are concerned. I love the feedback. I love the gratitude, and I love meeting you along the way. So having said that, as I was speaking earlier on, and I would have said, all of us knows what we need to change. And the difficult, when I say the difficulty, the one thing that is change is the only constant. So the idea of behavioral flexibility and making an effort and changing and doing things differently to the way you've always done them, knowing what you have to start doing that you're not doing, knowing what you have to stop doing that you know that you are doing and it's to your detriment or other people's detriments, and knowing what you have to continue doing, they're the things that you say, right, but I'm going to do them. I know to know and not to do is really not to know, but I know it. I know I'm not doing it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to make a big effort and I'm going to get this done. And I think that's the big step up. But where I say, but they say everything before but is BS. So, and the caveat that I would add to that is you have to crystallize that thinking. So when I say that change is the only constant and it can be more readily and easily affected than what you believe, it's because change requires you to take and put actions into place, forming healthy, actionable, beneficial, inevitable, and trusting the process habits, actionable being the actionable word. So the idea of saying, well, I need to do this, break down the action steps. So everybody knows, I keep saying this, everybody knows, that reminds me of that song, Everybody Knows That the Dice Are Loaded. It used to be an ad around smoking. It's just popped into my head, but that the song used to go, everybody knows. And the idea of it was everyone knows that smoking's bad for them, and everybody knows what's bad for them, and everybody knows what's good for them. And that it's not so much choices as it is preferences. So you might have a choice of going to the pub with your mates, but do you prefer to do that at the cost of your family, or do you choose to do it? And I think you've got to question your preferences. And even in the elections, you know, the preferential votes can actually swing an election as far as that's concerned. So think of the words as preference. Now, I was talking to Zach earlier on, and we're talking about NLP, and none of us are immune to any of this. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. How you think and how you speak is how you act. And so I always say, be careful of the language that you use to others and to yourself. Now, I said to Zach earlier on, between you and I, he'd asked me how my week had gone. I said, between you and I, I've had a bit of a tough week. And given that I spoke to Zach about it and I thought, oh, but it all sorted itself out, I thought I may as well share the story with you guys. And what had happened, you've probably heard that I've been working with a gym here in Manly, doing some boot camp on the beach for them and things like that. And I had some feedback from the owner that members were upset with the formats that I'd put into the class. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is I did something completely out of character. I've been talking to some of my clients and saying, you know, do the opposite of what it was you're going to do. I've been saying to some people, you know, like, if you think of doing that, think what's the worst thing that could possibly go wrong, and doing everything in your power to make sure it doesn't. Everything in your power can quite often involve the complete opposite of what it was you're about to do. I've always said to people, when you get triggered, and I talk about strategies for being triggered and being aware of the fact of words that trigger you and actions that trigger you, people that trigger you, environments that trigger you, that have a strategy prepared for those triggers so that when they come along, you are trigger happy, in that you are happy to come back with your response, which is, I know you are, you said you are, and what am I? Or a more intelligent or mature comeback or trigger response of, okay, I'm sorry that you feel that way, or whatever it is. So anyway, what had happened to me, I got in the other day, I was meeting a 6 o'clock client, and I checked in, I logged into the email address for this gym. Now, I don't look at it because it's not my, pretty much, let's say, it costs me more money to park there than I get paid, but I do it for the love of starting the day on the beach, watching the sunrise, and on the occasions that I do the boot camps, watching the sunset. So the value exchange is phenomenal. I'm connected to the planet. I'm, you know, talking with 32 people and motivating them. But that one person, somebody had made a complaint to the owner of the gym about my classes. But when I read it, and I read it without my glasses on, so that was a dumb mistake. And I replied again without my glasses on, and I replied immediately, because when I read it, my client I was about to see was 5 minutes away, and I looked at it, and in all honesty, I was really, really upset. I was triggered. I was triggered by the fact that, in retrospect, I now go, it's feedback, it's not failure, because I've had time. You know, what do they say? Hindsight is 20/20 vision. And I've had time to think about it. But what I had done was I reacted rather than responded. And the only rationale that I can put in my mind was that I had a client coming in 3 minutes' time. I was stunned by the response, and I did. My response was, I'm quite stunned and a bit disappointed that this is the case, because I lug this weight down there, and I've been getting great feedback. Anyway, turned out I got home, State of Origin was on, and it ruined the night for me because I didn't really watch the game. I was really, really worrying about what had happened, and stinking thinking had unraveled. And I coached myself to sleep that night. And, you know, not only did Queensland beat New South Wales in the State of Origin, but, you know, it's kind of like, oh, and it was a good game, but I was still distracted. And it made me think a lot around this thing. So, you know, I'm far from great, I'm far from phenomenal, but I'm working on it every single day. And I was saying to Zach, even Alex Ranieri would have times where he's really got to lift that up just to get in there. And usually for me, you know, the cold showers are things that do it, breathing exercise are things that do it. It might be an espresso shot of coffee. But it's also the idea of the greater good, and you guys talk about MIPS and I talk about MIPS, the most important people. And so no matter what it is that you think will make you great, or you think that is making you great, and what you believe you need to do to get to phenomenal, that you know what it is, I think one of the most overarching principles, or overarching the back of your mind you should always have, is who are the most important people that will benefit from that, or in some cases, who are the most important people in my life that if I chase after that butterfly, I lose them. And there's your value exchange. So for me, it really does come down to the fact where I think, okay, what do I have to do in order to make sure that everybody's happy? Now, again, I think it comes down to managing expectations. Communication, they say the problem with communication is that most people think it has happened when it really hasn't. But the idea of managing expectations. So if you're going to be late. Now, in order to let you guys know that we're going to be late, we would have actually had to open the stream. So that's why that couldn't be done. I'm a big stickler for time management. And I think I say on time is late in my books. So the idea of managing expectations. So I might say to somebody, hey, listen, I'm going to be running whatever. I don't have to do it too often, but I also say, you've asked me to be there at 3. Will you be on time? So that I can stack a dishwasher or do something like that, that I may not be doing that when I get to the person's house. I'm cranky that I could have done something with that time rather than sitting there and waiting for them. And so again, in managing expectations, I think the more people who know what your challenges are, what your stresses are, what your triggers are, the more people you have on your team. So in going from great to phenomenal, you have to have a plan of what it is. And that plan has to have structures towards it. And it's got to be communicated to the most important people in your life. Now, in the case of your employer, or even if you are the employer or the board or the business, of saying to the business, hey, I'm a family first man. You'll see contracts that we give to employees and we say, from time to time, you may be called upon to do some extra work outside, going to functions, having training and all that sort of thing. I encourage everybody to have a look at that and say, I've made a couple of addendums, in particular to clause 12B, and I've added clause 12C saying, from time to time, I may be called upon to attend family events, which of course will override my need to be at work. And no employer has ever said no to that. No, the people who I'm talking about aren't going to take the piss either. So those employers know that, yeah, sure. And you'd be surprised when you make it. Everyone signs contracts without making changes to them. Everyone I work with, I say, show me the contract, and we make about 5 or 6 changes. Never has an employer gone, no, because they want that. They want that person. And that's when they go, oh, I should ask for more money. Well, as I say, careful what you ask for because you just might get it. So in going from great to phenomenal, you have to define what phenomenal really is. I might have said it to you recently. They say that hell is, on the day that you die, meeting the person that you could have become with all the potential that you left in the cupboard or unused. So when you know, people write out their plans and they go, great. And I talk about the fact that my father always had an attitude of gratitude. He would say, great, you're all great, all the time. And all the way throughout his journals, it said, great. You know, David came up, it was great. And it was lovely. And, you know, the siblings, we all sat around, we read Dad's journals, and I was great. I was in this great 3 times. We're very competitive in a funny kind of way. So you know what it is. And I think you're all great and you're all part of this. You're all joined the tribe. And so that's a great thing to have done and to become a part of. But what does it take for you to become phenomenal? And you have to visualize. And when I say visualization can be done with your eyes open or your eyes closed, but you've got to sit in that feeling. So from a mental perspective, whatever you know today is whatever you know today. And let's just say we're 40-year-old, 50-year-old men, and we're going for the ripe old age of between 90 and 100. So what do you, from a mental perspective, want to look like and know and be able to communicate and educate younger people on in your 90s and say even into the centenarian years? I say to people, from a legacy perspective, be so generous with your time, wisdom, and knowledge that people don't want you to die. They're not hanging around waiting for your money, everything you've created, because you're worth more to them than the money that you're going to leave behind. That's legacy. That's living your legacy. So from a mental perspective, think, okay, you know, and you'll know, you know, well, Dad was Spanish. I always wanted to learn Spanish, but you didn't. But you can. It's never too late. Duolingo, download the app, go to Spanish speaking classes, spend a month in Spain. Everything is doable if you have the desire to do it, you believe it's realistic, you put a deadline on it, you take the action steps and you make it happen. So there's mental. From a physical perspective, how many kilos have you been trying to lose for years? What's your fighting weight? And being realistic. So don't say, well, you know what? I want to be 80 because that's when I got married, I was 80. Well, okay, you did, but that might have been 30 years ago, could have been 20 years ago, could have been 10 years ago. You might have had some injuries that you can't run. You may, so these are the things it's got to be absolutely realistic. However, when I say however, My phenomenal requires a lot more effort, imagination, and commitment than great. Great is everyone can be great. You know, when I say 1% of the only 1% of the population get this life, 99% of the people wandering around out there have no idea what's going on. They would look at what we're all involved in as some sort of a cult, as some sort of a weirdo thing, and that keeps them happy. That keeps them safe because they don't have to make any changes. They say there's no growth in the comfort zone. And the idea of people not wanting to become uncomfortable and having uncomfortable conversations or even making uncomfortable decisions, that's why there's the naysayers. Arnold Schwarzenegger says, don't listen to the naysayers. I love listening to the naysayers. My greatest achievements to this very day happen because of the naysayers who told me they couldn't happen. As soon as somebody tells me that something can't be done, I do it. Now, curiously, back to the agitation I received earlier in the week, I was so interested in the introspective, or when I say self-awareness, I had to really, when I say coach myself, it was almost like I had to look at me and go, right, what advice would you give to you? And tell me what's gone on. And I went through it in my head. What is it? Why is this upsetting me so much? Well, one, they kind of questioned I'm fantastic, I'm phenomenal. I had to put my ego in check. And it was a bit of an ego check. Now, I'll get to the punchline of the story in a minute, but the processes that I went through were quite concerning because I thought, well, what is it about that? What lessons haven't I learned? Why am I so upset with this? And whenever upheaval comes around, you go, okay, it's for me, a level up. The upheaval happens always just before a level up. When stuff's happening and all of a sudden, financially, there might be, okay, hang on, be careful. If I have a scarcity mentality financially, I'm going to stay with that scarcity mentality. If I flick the switch and have an abundance mentality and look at this from an opportunistic, there's enough for everybody, then I'm opening my mind and heart and actions to abundance, to having an abundant life, to being generous, to saying, sure, come on in. And then abundance happens. Wherever your attention goes, your energy flows. You think negatively and you're going to have negative energy. You think positive, there's enough for everybody, you're going to have positive energy and come up with great ideas. So anyway, I had ruminated over all of this and I'd even gotten to a stage where I think, well, you know what? Blow them. I quit. They can jam it up their freckle. They don't deserve me. So I went through that part of the thing as well. And then I sat back and I thought, well, hang on. What do I always say to people? Why? Why did I approach these people in the first place? Well, somebody said to me, hey, there's an opportunity for you. I reckon you'd be great. I know the owner wants to do boxing. You're the best boxing coach I've ever met. Get in there and do it, which is what I had done. Now, that was another trigger. Apparently, the feedback had come back that my boxing sessions were like boxercise. And in my rebuttal or my rebuke, I wrote back, hang on, I don't know what boxercise is, so I'll have to Google that. But blah, 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 that was that. Hope because the fellow had actually said, I'm going to take you out of those classes and try to get some members back because your numbers are terrible. Now, I was so rattled by it that I went through and it turns out that my numbers are up 80% over everybody else's. And I may have said to you guys, and this is where I think instinct comes in. Now, we are the only creatures on the planet that have the ability to reason and rationalize or to think about our actions. Every other creature doesn't have that, so they rely upon instincts. I believe we have 8 senses. There are 5 senses that are known, smell, taste, touch, sound, and sight. And when one of those goes, the others step up. As far as a blind person will have phenomenal hearing, a deaf person will have phenomenal sight. Helen Keller was a genius. For those of you who don't know her, she was deaf, dumb, and blind. And they were, the faculties went away from her as she progressed through for whatever illness. I can't name it right now. Memory escapes me. Now, memory, I believe, is one of those senses. I also believe that instinct is a sense that we all have, but we don't use it. Now, the other sense that I believe that we have is your subconscious. And I believe your subconscious mind is one of your senses, but that's for another discussion. But on the idea that instinct So we have instinct. And I say to people, when we really get to a decision they have to make that's either life-changing or people are going to get upset or they're really not quite sure, I always say, or I ask, what is your gut telling you? Tell me what your gut tells. Well, no. Really sit and think on that, because that is instinct. And just like muscles, if you don't use your muscles, they atrophy. They waste away. You get sarcopenia. Your bone density breaks. That's it. You don't use your mind. It does. It doesn't. It kind of disappears. Mark Twain said, "The man who does not read has no advantage over the man who cannot read." If you don't read, what's the point? You know what I mean? Listen to Audible, that's fine. Same thing. I don't discredit that. As I say, when I really want to retain something, I read the book and I listen to the Audible version at the same time. Now, the reason I really want to read it is because I really want to learn it, because it interests me. So on the instinct matter. So the first, it's kind of a joke that I tell, our memory is the second one of our senses or faculties that goes. And then people go, what's the first one? And I say, I don't remember. I get a bit of a chuckle, but the reality of it is the first one that goes is your sense of smell. And sense of smell is linked to early onset dementia and Alzheimer's. Now, if any of you have lost your sense of smell, it's not a given and it's not 100%. However, you can ward off. Somebody asked me a question in the Q&A not long ago, how to improve your memory. You can ward off the effects of memory and brain degradation through working on the sense of smell. While you're at it, work on all of them. So getting back, I'll close the loop on that story because I'm still on instinct. Instinct, a word popped into my head or an expression popped into my head, and it was cui bono. And I thought, cui bono, that's a Latin phrase, C-U-I-B-O-N-O. And it means who benefits. And I couldn't work out, because in all my kind of, I've worked for some of the most political organizations in the country, and I've worked with some pretty shady characters. Why are people why are they complaining about me? Yeah, sure, I may be fallible, but what's the benefit? Why do they benefit from telling this fellow? And then I went, and it's like, well, nobody in my boxing class is in any of those other classes. And those boxing people have all been emailing me. So, and then I realized there's a couple of young personal trainers. They've been copying my stuff. And if any of you have ever seen or heard of the movie Single White Female, the single white female was, there was an ad for single white female wanted to share a flat. And the woman moved in and she was a brunette or whatever, but she liked the girl who put the ad in was a blonde haired bobbed lady. And the end of the story, the lady tried to imitate her so much, the new flatmate, that she killed her and took her place. And so cui bono, who benefits, came to my head, and I thought, my instinct tells me in all of the situations I've been in politically, it's the people who benefit from your demise or slander or whatever, who are the ones who make stuff up about you. And I may have said it before, one of the worst human instincts is the instinct of envy. They talk about the 7 deadly sins, and the one that's not any fun is envy. So when you're thinking about going from great to phenomenal, understand along the way that envious people, you could be related to them, may pull you back. Sibling rivalry, as I say, Cain and Abel, one of the second stories in the Bible. Cain kills his brother Abel, and he says to God, am I my brother's keeper? When God asks him where's his brother. Anyway, that goes on. And there's another thing where I say, family first is a big thing. And I really believe, one of my brothers said to me many years ago, you don't spend much time with the family these days. And I said, I spend all my time with my family. He said, no, I mean our family. And I said, our family? Yeah, but my family has to come first. And I really believe that you've made a decision to start a family or be part of a family, and that family really has to come first. And I meet a lot of people and I hear them where they haven't spoken to them. It's a difficult thing. Even the expression, blood is thicker than water, that your parents will throw at you or in-laws may throw at you. It's probably one of the most misquoted expressions that there ever is, because the true expression is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, which pretty much means that friendships are more solid than those of siblings, because the water of the womb is nowhere near as thick as the blood of the covenant that you have with your friend or colleagues and things. Now, I'm not saying turn your back on your family and do things with friends, because your family are the ones most likely to stick with you in the future, and the ones most able to tell you more about yourself and what they knew in childhood. But work on those relationships, and also understand there is going to be, you're doing better than a brother, you're doing better than a sister, that they're going to be a little bit tall poppy syndromes. The Americans have no idea of what tall poppy syndrome is, because Sir Isaac Newton, for example, said, if I have grown taller, it's because I've stood upon the shoulders of giants. We in Australia get taller by chopping off the heads of our opponents, hence the tall poppy syndrome. So be aware of the fact that on your journey from great to phenomenal, there will be the naysayers, and there will be the envious, and there'll be the people who are telling you things that's really easy to hear, but it's not necessarily the best thing for you. Somebody sent me a song the other night, and I listened to it. And as I listened to it, I thought, wow, it was quite moving, and it was stirring me for some of the content of the song. And I said to the fellow, wow, that's quite a rabbit hole you could go down listening to that. Don't listen to it too often. And as much as I say, choose the idea of, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends. Choose the people you hang around whose opinions you value, that aren't serving you, supporting you, nurturing you, or sustaining you. Choose the song lists or the music that you listen to, or the programming that you're watching that isn't serving you, supporting you, nurturing you, or sustaining you. Quite often your TikTok feed, if you're on it, or your Instagram feed, will betray you, if you like, on the content that it serves you because of what you've liked or shown an interest in or followed, and it then puts you into a category which is your currency. Now, the idea that, sure, some of us out there might have had cantankerous relationships and narcissism may be thrown at us, things like that, and then all of a sudden you'll be on TikTok and it'll tell you what a narcissist is. And the idea that you're listening to other people who are strangers from where all over the world telling you things that an ex may have said to you, your current partner might be saying to you, it's not doing you any favors. It's actually validating what is hurtful to you anyway from a stranger's perspective. And I had somebody once tell me, he said, I sat down with my ex last night, and then she pretty much, we have a truce that she won't call me names anymore, and that we're not to say bad things about each other. And that's on behalf of the children. We really want to coexist or co-parent. And so we do spend time. And he said, but last night she read out 50 ways that a narcissist can be a narcissist, and pretty much looked at me after every single one and accused me of all of them. And I said, how many of them did you believe to be true? And he said, well, at the time, all of them. And I said, and how many of them do you now believe? And he said, well, I don't believe any of them. I said, good. That's your job. So in going from great to phenomenal, you've got to write down what it is. So when the Americans made the Constitution, it was signed by 56 men, not quite sure, the Mastermind Alliance, which is where I like the idea of the Mastermind Alliance of HPF, because you're a cohort who can all talk together. Occasionally, you'll need to go out and spend time with yourself and with a trusted one to talk things out as well. But the idea that you write it down and that becomes your manifesto. So when I say, and I may have told you blokes, that every year I write a letter to myself, and every morning I read it out to myself, and every night I read it out to myself. And that's how this year is going to go. That's my manifesto. That is my Magna Carta, if you like. It's what I'm going to follow all the way through this year. So it's one thing I say to people when I teach them public speaking skills. I say, I tell you one thing, if you know your content, there's nothing, you will have no problem. So learn your content, retain your content, write it out. We learn to think on paper, type it out, then record it into your phone, then listen to it while you're walking, listen to it while you're running or rowing or cycling, something that gets the heart rate up, and you'll retain that. Now, when you get up there, the only thing that's going to throw you off is if you bring something in that wasn't in the schedule, as in it wasn't in your presentation. And it'll be like, a funny thing happened to me on the way here today. No one laughs. Boom, you bombed. practice a joke if you're going to say that on a bunch of people and people who aren't necessarily family, strangers, and see who laughs. A fellow told me a joke the other day, which I used, and it was fantastic, because on Saturday morning was the first time that I actually did boot camp since the feeling bad about the feedback. And the joke was, why did I saw it? I think I might have seen it on the HVF thing. Why did the chickens come to the gym? And that was, they wanted to work on their pecs. But I said to the people, hey, listen, if you see any chickens running around here, don't let that get in the way of your workout. Someone said, chickens? I said, yeah, apparently there's a few on their way to work on their pecs. So I stole that joke. I think it was Amesbury, actually. I saw it on the Facebook thing. And it was phenomenal. But because it made me laugh, I thought it would. Now, I also had a very active audience. You know yourselves, when you have a cold shower, when you've done a workout, anything like that, you're in a better frame of mind. The idea that it took me a couple of workouts to go, wow, I don't really care about that. And, you know, here's what I find interesting. And it's, I'm telling you because it's a lesson that I learned. And that's the point. In coaching myself to sleep, I thought, right, I'm going to say something on Saturday morning. I'm just going to say it for the last time, and then that's that. And so in the boot camp class on Saturday morning, I said, hey, guys, just to let you know, this is the thing. If you've ever got any feedback, just come and talk to me. Responsible people have the ability to respond, and reactive people live in a world of blame. And this one woman said, all right, David, that's enough, go on. And I thought, wow. And what I had said was, I've done boot camp all over the world, I've trained with this, and I started talking myself up, but I was trying to make the point. And this woman said, righto, that's, you know, and I said, okay, it's all right. That's all I have to say. But here's your workout now. Now, everyone would have been weeing blood by the end of that workout, because if you don't, the thing was they're not intense enough. And my point was, there's an expression that says, don't raise your voice, raise the level of your argument. So when you're in a conversation, if it gets a bit heated, say, well, hang on, let's raise the level of our argument. Let's not raise our voices. And so I was saying to the class, if it's not tough enough, do a double take. You know, if I only tell you 10 burpees, do 20. Be responsible. And that's that. So the idea of that, as I afterwards, I thought, oh, next thing you know, the owner's going to say, there's been feedback. Now, I said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to let this bother me. That's it, David, just let it go. And when what I had to laugh about later on in the day was, wow, if I had have applied that philosophy to my reading of the email on Wednesday night, am I planning to say this? Wasn't triggered. I planned to actually say this to the class. If I had have taken that attitude beforehand, then that's what I've got to take through with me. So there's the lesson there is the difference between being great and phenomenal is always being able to check yourself to say, all right, what is the worst thing that can possibly go wrong? Is it as bad as it is, or I seem to feel it is right now? Will this bother me in 2 weeks' time? What is the worst thing that can possibly happen? And as I was driving home, and I thought, you know what? The other night I had the attitude where I was going to go, well, you know what, jamming up your freckle. So if the owner of the gym says, you know what, it's probably not good for us to stay on, then that's okay. I'm okay with that. And one of the things here, we ended up speaking today, and I said, mate, I had a mantra I used to say to myself when I was about 18, and that was, not everyone's going to like me, and I'm okay with that. And I adopted that. Not everyone's going to like my methods. Not everyone's going to like my training style. Don't book in the class. That's fine. What we've since decided is I'm going to be giving mind and body mastery classes on the beach. So if you want to get in there and be inspired and motivated whilst you do your burpees, and join David Lee's class. If you just want to sit there and do, then don't join his class. And that's where we're moving forward. So I got his support, which is a good thing. It took a lot of ruminating, but again, I had to have the conversation. And I think that's where the difference is. You know, the keyboard warriors, I bought into a keyboard argument rather than actually go and have the facial, the look. 60% of body language is face to face. So that's another one of those things. Put people first and think of the greater good. Think of who benefits. Q bono. Now, in all things. So even if you can't work out why there's a problem here, who benefits and why is that happening? Great. But in making a decision, also think who benefits And if the most important people, so I say have your mitts, but have your MIPS, the most important people in your life. Now, at the top of that list has to be you. You have to be the most important person in your life. It is not self, what's the word? I don't even know it anymore. It's not selfishness, it's self-preservation. And it's not self-sabotage, it's self-deprioritization. So you have to prioritize yourself because you are the captain of the ship and you have to be. Now, that doesn't mean you're the boss. I used to say, mummy's the boss, but daddy's the king. And I only remember that today when I walked past the pub and it said King's Long Weekend. I thought, what's this? Oh, yeah, we've got a king now. For years, we've been under the reign of a queen. Now, I'm all about equality. I have 2 daughters and I identified as feminist for many, many years of my daughters' lives, and it's served me very, very well. And in that case, when I talk about romance, which I'm sure you guys are interested in, the difference between a great lover and a phenomenal lover is how much of, yes, themselves they think about, but the other person as well. And the idea of complacency. Now, every single thing I say fits across every master of your mastery. Mental, physical, spiritual, social, financial, family, business, and romance. Every single one of these apply. So you have to look at each of those situations and the role you play in them and visualize where you want the story to end and how you want the story to end. So obviously with your romantic partner, you don't want to get divorced. You don't want to break up. You don't want to always be fighting. What's the opposite of fighting? Loving. So we generally will sit there and say, and when I sit there with couples and they go, I said, can you say something nice about Catherine? Well, no, don't actually say something that you tell me 3 things you love about her. And, Gary will say that. And I'll say, Catherine, when was the last time you heard that? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now, bear with me, Catherine. What's 3 things you don't like about Catherine? Well, I don't like when she does that. And I don't like when she does this. And I don't like when she does that. Okay, good. We're going to put a time limit on it. When was the last time you heard that, Catherine? This morning? Did you hear it yesterday? I did. Hear it the day before? Yes, I did. Why are you changing this, Catherine? There you go. Catherine's not changing because that's all she's hearing. No one nagged themselves into a positive outcome. However, if it's, we talk in the workplace about the praise sandwich, praise, criticize, praise. My thing is give credit where credit is due. And I would generally praise people as things happened. Even with your children, the same thing. Well done. You did a great job there. Fantastic. Hey, you haven't made your bed, make your bed. So you're not just telling them what they're doing wrong, you're telling them what they're doing right. But all the reasons and the things that attracted you to your partner, they're still there. There's just all this other stuff. And I talk about the towel on the bed that has gotten in the way, that we ever take over everything. And the worst thing is, the more you tell that person what you don't like about them, the more they believe you and they deliver on it. So that's the problem when you tell kids they're dumb. You just raise a dubbo because he believes it, and there have been evidential cases of facts where teachers have been told, right, you've got the geniuses, there's the geniuses, we don't want you to treat them any different to the dunces, but the dunces are over there. And in fact, the classes have been shifted, but the behavior and the way they talked to the kids who were the geniuses, who were actually the dunces, led them to believe that they were smart, gave them the time, and off they went. All of the teachers I ever had in life, the ones who showed me a bit of care, a bit of concern, got the best results out of me. The ones who, Lee, there's no such thing as Santa Claus. What? Worst year of my life in school, and probably should have just failed 5th grade. I was that old when I actually was, when the dream was shattered. But again, that was one of those things that was an irresponsible thing to do. Now, visualizing, again, as a father, what do you want your children to be saying about you when you're 90 and 100? Now, the question I ask again, and this applies to everything again, if I ask you, what would you like your children, people say at your funeral, no, what do you want your children to be able to say about you when you're 90 and 100? The next question I ask is, could they say that about you now? And if the answer is no, what do you have to do to make that real? What is it? Yes, they will come back. We've got You know, the beautiful children, we have to wait 40 weeks to see them, to meet them, so that we develop the patience to put up with their tears and crying and toddler years. They then become teenagers to wean us off how much we love them in those pre-teenage years. They then become independent adults. So you've got dependent children, codependent children, independent children, but we want interdependent children. We want everybody to be working and understand that we've had a family meeting, and I encourage you to have family meetings at least once a week where everybody gets an opportunity to talk, and they tell you, you tell them, and you say, hey, listen, this is the family meeting, and it becomes set in stone. You know, obviously take some into account that if soccer's going to come along or footy's going to come along or any of that sort of stuff, that you're flexible. And if you know about it, you say, okay, we're going to move, because what happens with anything, whether it's a workout, when I say to somebody, when was the day you woke up and decided you weren't going to be fit any longer, or fit no longer felt fantastic? And they go, oh, you know, I popped an Achilles, or I moved overseas, or something happened and it changed the circumstance. Now the family meetings will be changed because one of them will get a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And so you say, okay, if you want to go out with Kevin on Saturday night, then we need to move the family meeting to right now. And actually, now that we're having that within the family meeting, what time's Kevin going to bring you home? Those are the sort of things you have. But again, it's managing expectations. It's no different. The minutes of the meeting, you sit in business. As I say, sometimes when it's great at business, it's bad at home. When it's great at home, it's bad at business. But businesses have structure. Businesses have business plans. Businesses have finance plans. Bank accounts have alerts. Gyms, we have heart rate monitors and all this sort of business. Do we apply the heart rate monitor? Do we apply the minutes of the meeting to the business of being a family, to the business of romance? Like, give yourself a score out of 10, where 7 is not an option on a romantic scale. Now, when you that day where the photos are all taken, or when you told them whatever, 10 out of 10. What happened that put it to where it is now or may be? And as I say, this is, you know, I train every day because I want to live to 100. But I know that if I don't do that, then, and this is why I use the word treat day rather than cheat day, because treat day has to come in across all of those things. Treat yourself. If you've got a financial plan, do treat yourself. Spend a little bit of money on yourself in a good way, because you become a Scrooge or a Stinge. It becomes a habit. You know, no one who has saved and scrimped and saved gets to the age of 40 and goes, right, now I'm going to, they don't. You just don't. You get stuck in those ways. Similarly, if I've exercised every day or thereabouts since the age of 18, why would I stop now? It's become a habit. If you continually tell your partner you love her and buy her flowers and give her massages and take her to the show or do whatever you do, it's going to become a habit unless you stop it. Well, you keep telling your children they're fantastic and you coach their soccer teams and give them encouragement. You tell them, hey, no, we don't stand for that in this family. Quit your curse words, buddy. You know, that sort of thing, because you've always been on it. Life wasn't meant to be easy, but once you get going and once you get it and you've got your eyes on phenomenal, because great's is not good enough. You know, great comes and goes. Greatness is something some people enjoy a period of time of greatness. The idea of, you know, watching a game of rugby league and those blokes won't be playing in 15 years. So what can they be doing to be phenomenal? They give back. They put back into the community. They might telecast. They might do whatever they do. But most of them, if they've got a good manager, their manager will be actually giving them investment advice, giving them advice around studying something well before the career ends. And so you've always got to have your eye on where you want to go. It's like when you, as I say, specificity. You want to be a meaningful specific rather than a wandering generality. If you've got a general idea of where you want to go in life, then you'll generally get where you generally think you want to go. If you have a specific idea because you've written down mental, physical, spiritual, social, financial, family, business, and romance, and where you want to go and what you have to do, and you tick it off, it literally is. And as I say, I mean, I'm not talking from the idea that that gets red pen in my the post-it notes that come up. Tuesday weights, Saturday weights. That was something that I had to adjust because things came into my life or changed in my life. That meant I had to be flexible. And so no matter what your plan is and your unique gifts. And you all know that you were born with unique gifts, and you'll know them. You'll know them when you see them. Of a daytime, one of the things I say is to be consciously concerned, consciously aware of the times that I'm using the gifts and abilities that have been given to me to the best of my ability, and consciously concerned and aware of the times, and consciously aware of the times that I'm not, and concerned, and changing that around. And so, like today, I have felt a little bit, a bit flat, a bit whatever. And so it's been really, I don't know how many cups of coffee I had, and I had one about half an hour before I got on tonight. I did that because I knew I needed to level up. I had to step up in order to, hopefully I've done a good job, or I am doing a good job tonight. Hope's not a strategy, but the idea that that's what I'm prepared to do. And again, your actions betray your thoughts. So your thoughts and your words and your actions speak louder than words. The truth is rarely heard, only seen, Balthazar Gracian said. It's when I say to people, one of the greatest things you guys can do is be a mentor. Be a mentor to, it could be volunteering, excuse me, mentor somebody in the workplace. You all know there's somebody you see in your workplace. You kind of think, you might have even tried to talk some people into joining HPF with you because you see the benefits that you've received from joining. And if they haven't, teach them what you know. To teach is to learn twice. But the greatest way I have found whenever I volunteered to mentor anybody, or they've asked me to mentor them, I said, oh, okay, yeah, 100%, I'd love to. Let's catch up in 2 weeks' time. But in the meantime, can you read this book? I think this is a great book you should read. Or I'll send it to them. I'll ask them and I'll send them that book. And then I'll say, so we'll catch up in 2 weeks' time. Now, in 2 weeks' time, when I say, so what did you think of the book? If they say, well, I haven't read it yet, I go, okay, and I give them the 15 minutes. Sayonara, pal. You didn't do your homework. You got one shot. And that's the greatest way for you, because time's my greatest commodity. I learned that for myself. I had an executive coach once many years ago who told me that he was employed by my company because I was a really high performer, but I didn't play the game. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you don't play the game. And I said, well, it's a very political company and I'm not very political. I don't like playing the game. And he said, but by not playing the game, you are playing the game. I'm what? He said, a non-player is playing an aloofness. They think it's arrogant. CEO thinks you think you're better than him. And it's like, wow. Anyway, the book that he advised me to read was The 48 Laws of Power. Now, on the back page of The 48 Laws of Power, it says, for those who want to be armed against power, to be powerful, or just to enjoy observing the power game. I was all three at the time. I wanted to get ahead in life. I also wanted to be able to handle the corrupt people in the workplace. And it talks around a lot of historical wars and moves and power plays and things like that. Anyway, it's about a 484-page book, if I remember correctly. I met the guy a week later and he said, how have you gone? Did you end up buying that book? And I said, yes, it was phenomenal. He said, where are you at? I said, I finished it. He goes, it's 400. I said, no. You told me that every problem I had would be solved by that book. He said, yeah. And I said, I got up from that cafe when we said goodbye and I walked to Dimmick's, bought that book and devoured it in the week. So the funny thing is the first two laws, never outshine the master. And the second is don't place too much trust in friends because they can slander you and all that sort of thing. And the workplace that I was working for, the boss was the master. And there's a quote that says, the stars, as brilliant as they may be, know never to shine while the sun is out. And what I was doing, which I didn't realize, the boss was a funny guy, but not very funny. He'd tell jokes and I'd go, and I'd fix the punchline up, dumb, outshining the master. And that was him who hired the executive coach. And the struggles that I was having within the company were my supposed friend slandering me and sent it Q Bono. He was getting all my clients because they were giving them to him by his backyard, backstabbing, so to speak. When anyone ever tells you they're Switzerland, they're not. They're going to be a Swiss army knife, and they'll stab you in the back. I had somebody say to me once, I won't stab you in the back. I'll stab you in the chest. I said, I'd rather you didn't stab me anywhere. What can I do to avoid that? So yes, it's always being aware. And as I say, the difference between great and phenomenal is phenomenal costs a lot more. Phenomenal costs you a lot more of this space, but once you've done it, once you've done it, you don't have to do it. Little by little, a little becomes a lot. Everything's hard at the start. The idea that doing one thing, the first thing and the only thing, is what opens the door to many things being able to you. You know what that one thing is that you should be doing. My father used to always say, do the simple things well, and everything else will take care of itself. So if in the course of your day, you go, right, what do I need to do? What's a simple thing I could do from a mental perspective? You know what? I'm going to go to a chat AI. Be careful of that, by the way, because there's a lot of inaccuracies in this artificial intelligence stuff. I did download one only because the company asked me, could I come and talk to them about it, and wanted me to give them some advice on how to work with AI. Now, the advice I gave them is don't. You're an advertising agency, you have creative minds. Machines will never replace people to that degree because people have empathy. The logos, ethos, and pathos, which is logic, empathy, and ethos and ethics, that machines don't have. And some of the information that I've been given off this is it's absolutely inaccurate, because these AI things go and search your websites, and it doesn't necessarily have to come from a PhD or a medical research or whatever. If somebody might have written on the web one day, chickens cluck because when they're cold. Now that's AI picks that up as fact. It doesn't mean it is. So be careful of that. So the idea of it being that you know what you have to do. It's write down your goals, journal every single day. Guys, the first thing I would recommend anyone to do, and if Epictetus said, if you want to be a writer, write. If you want to get into the habit of anything, get into the habit of it. And it all starts with the first step, which is picking up a pen and paper and writing it. I don't care whether you write digger's hat on the mat, write something and just get those thoughts out of your mind. That before the meditation. But what you should be doing every single day is looking at your goals. You know, like my family goals are, and how have I ticked it off? The red that I've had is an agreement from, and, you know, paint the picture and gain agreement. That was one of the things that within my family, I wasn't painting the picture. I wasn't getting their agreement. They'd say, yeah, but I didn't paint the picture of how it would look for them. And in anything, you appeal to somebody's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. People are naturally self-serving. So serve yourself first, but everything you're doing is to be phenomenal. And that means you've got to get to yourself where you say, okay, this is what I'm prepared to do. This is what I'm prepared to do. Now, if you're not where you want to be, if you don't feel phenomenal, it's because of the things you aren't doing, and you know what they are. Now, I'm very conscious of your time. Sorry that we started late. Thanks for waiting. I always tell people that men don't apologize. John Wayne said, never apologize, never explain. But I teach women how not to say sorry all the time. Sorry. I say, hey, a better thing would be to say, thanks for waiting. My bad. I don't like that expression, but just try to avoid saying sorry when you haven't done anything wrong. In a relationship, always apologize. Always apologize for the situation that went on and how your role in that and what you're prepared to do, and gain agreement on whether what you're prepared to do is enough to take that relationship from great to phenomenal. Now, fellas, I'm starting because I've finished the book and all that sort of thing, and the names have been changed and all that sort of thing. I'm doing a webinar series that I'm recording for. It's the online program for the book that eventually I'll offer for sale. But I'm going to get a beta audience. Now, by that I mean I'm going to record each chapter as a live Zoom in a webinar setting. If you'd like to be on that for free, I'll send you the dates, and if they work out, then that's great. But david@leeway.com.au, I'm thinking of doing it every Wednesday at about 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock would be probably good for me, or Thursday, but I'm going to just start doing it. So the first E of equilibrium, which is the book title has changed, and one of the things is the 8 elixirs. But anyway, the first one is enlightenment. So the next thing that I'll be talking on to my friends, all my clients and things that just can help me record this. If you want on, I love a live audience, so to speak, and you'll get a bit of benefit out of it. I'm going to be talking about the first E of equilibrium, which is enlightenment, and there are 9 enlightenment practices. So you'll get a good hour of that. If you want to be on that webinar, as I say, it's free, david@leeway.com.au. I'll then send you a webinar link and you can get on and be one of the audience. Not sure whether I will open it up for questions after the webinar, because there might be some things that will help me along the way to improve. You know, I always learn through questions. I had a boss once who would always go, question mark. He had an accent, and his thing was always be curious and always be questioning. And I spent a lot of time questioning myself this week, and throughout the course of those questions and the rumination and the introspection, the answer came to me. The instinct came to me of what really was going on. And I think that's where we'll find, you know, sometimes, but be careful, monitor your thinking, keep it to under half an hour. Fyodor Dostoevsky said, to think too much is a disease, and be aware of stinking thinking. And as I say, when the stinking thinking comes along, immediately flick the switch to linking thinking. Change your thoughts to where you want to go. Link your thinking to your goals. So as soon as I start to think something, as I say, false evidence appearing real, and you start going down the rabbit hole. Now, the reason why I overthought this is because there was far too much fact and far too many things to have to consider. And I spent a lot of time on it, but I got the outcome, and it was important because I really wanted to continue doing what I was doing in the frame of mind I was doing it. I don't want to do it begrudgingly or turn up and whatever. So limit your thinking to half an hour. Liken it to if this was a bucket of muddy water and I shake it up and the silt sinks to the bottom, and there's clarity, clear water revival. That's from a thinking perspective. But then if I started to do that, then the light would probably shine through it. And I said, why is the light? Is there a lit? And overthinking. So limit your thinking on a particular subject or thought process, or exercise, if you like, to half an hour. Any more starts to get a little bit more. Any less, 10 minutes is okay, but practice just sitting and thinking. As I say, I can sometimes just look out the window and think. And when I want to do something mindfully, I look out the window while mindfully eat. So that to me is a good way of eating. I'm not watching television, I'm not reading, I'm mindfully just gazing and thinking. Great ideas come to you. I could talk all night, as I say, but if you want to be on that webinar, I'll send the dates and the links. I'd love you to be a part of it, because I really do enjoy the feedback, and I will have you in mind as I am. So feel free, even in the thing, to say what enlightenment practices you're struggling with, and I'll focus on those as well, because again, that's going to help more people. The reason I decided to write a book in the first place was the idea that some people said, oh, it's like listening to a fire hose, but a book you can stop and think, and a book you can highlight, and a book you can pass on, and it gives you a bit of time. And of course, books are your first second E of equilibrium, which is education. Gentlemen, thank you very much again for your patience and for your attendance. Any questions, of course, hit me up with the same email address, david@leeway.com.au. It's my personal email address. And again, I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks again. I was unexpected tonight, but happy to have been able to step up. Well done, fellas. Have a great night. Ciao.